This episode is brought to you by Brave Wave, a video game music label and a returning sponsor of our podcast. They have released a new album, the first ever solo album by the composer of Ninja Gaiden. It is titled Retroactive Part 1. You can go to store.bravewave.net to listen to the entire album for free and buy it if you want.
Hello! Cara Ellison, how are you?
It's March 11th, 2015.
This is Idle Thumbs 201. I'm Chris Remo.
I'm Danielle Riendo.
And I'm Jake Rodkin.
And we are joined this week by our friend Cara Ellison.
Hello!
Woman about town.
Yay.
And general writer person.
General vagabond and lost person. Hello!
Cara writes the Embed With series, where she goes around to hang out with game developers and write about their lives and their games and other really cool things.
That's right, although it's technically finished now because I'm exhausted, so...
That's fair enough. I think that's a good reason to end something.
Yeah, no, it's good. Although it's kind of like the leftover of that is that I still don't really have a home or, like, any money.
So where are you going after you are not in San Francisco anymore?
Oh, well, I am actually going to cat sit for Steve Gaynor, which... in Portland.
Man, never before has Hot Scoop's been more relevant than Steve Gaynor's cats. Sorry.
Seriously.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's kind of just like, well, I don't really have anything better to do, and that's actually quite a good title for a book.
I don't think anyone has anything better to do than that.
That's
Right.
true. That's a good thing to do.
But I thought like a really good title for a book would be Cat Sitting for Steve Gaynor.
Yeah, it really does. It does sound lovely.
Yeah, I mean, it would just be like me frustrated and being trolled by cats, but that's the entirety of the book.
That's fine.
So far.
You also read the S.EXE series at Rock Paper Shotgun.
Yes, that's
and
right.
the last one that you did, or at least the last one that I read, was on Maureen Corley from Full Throttle.
That's right.
And that was one of my favorite pieces of writing on Full Throttle, I think, actually.
Really?
Yeah, because Maureen
super tough.
Corley is an amazing character who does not actually get a lot of print dedicated to her.
No, it's true.
I don't know what to say about it other than you should go look up that article.
Well, I mean, so for me, I think that the subtext of that whole article really is, here is what a really brilliant and like delicate writer Tim Shafer is. I feel like the whole of that article is really just, look how he makes these people human. Isn't that great?
Yeah,
like,
but I don't know if Tim actually has hit a female character as strong as Maureen in any of his games after that either. I don't know, but like...
Well, so the thing that I like about the Maureen and Ben relationship, this is actually a thing I was talking about with, like, we did a press event for our game Firewatch last week, and...
nice how you're segueing this into talking about plugging Firewatch.
I know. This sounds very self-important, but I was talking to Chris Solentrop, who is writes for the New York Times and writes a lot of video game stuff for them. And he asked me, like, he played through the demo of the game, and then he asked me, like, so what's a thing I should know about Firewatch? And I, like, with no other context or like other questions leading into that, and I was caught like completely by surprise. I don't know, for some reason, it left me completely like
it's coming to PC in 2015.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing that I sort of realized that I'd been thinking about that week was that it felt like we're sort of trying to make a game for adults, not like an adult game in the sense that it's like rated M for mature, but like a game that is about adult human beings who interact with each other in a way that is essentially adult and not sort of sensationalized, which is actually quite rare in video games, which tend to be patterned after like action films in which dialogue between characters, and certainly dialogue between like men and women often is like sexually charged in a way that is kind of artificial and not really how real like men and women or men and men or women and women talk to each other as actual adults in the actual world. And like thinking about Ben and Maureen, I think one of the reasons that relationship relates or sort of resonates with me so much is because you can sort of feel in those characters that they are adults. Like there is like something there between them, obviously, that like they relate to each other on like numerous levels. But there's also a sort of restrained nature to the whole thing, and that it doesn't feel like everything they say to each other is like a zinger for the screen.
Yeah.
That is,
and there's also like I guess I wrote it because I became aware that like a section of my readership is asexual, and a lot of them.
Really?
Yeah, someone sent me a really nice message to my Ask page saying, "Thank you so much. Like even if you you yourself are not asexual, thank you so much for like basically watching your." Like the way you address particular things, and thank you so much for like making me feel not completely alienated when you're writing like entirely about sex and relationships. Because they were like, and they dropped me this thing, and I was really surprised because I guess I didn't think too much about it, but I certainly have friends who've made me aware of those issues before, and I was super pleasantly surprised to hear that. And so I became aware of the fact that I wasn't covering relationships between men and women in video games that weren't sexually charged and that were primarily about friendship, like platonic friendship. And I guess Ben and Maureen came to mind simply because there's that really wonderful conversation that they have at the end of the game where essentially Maureen she gets a phone call, and they said, oh, you know, like let's have lunch or something sometime. And he said, and Ben's like, oh, that sounds nice, right?
And then she just starts talking about the faulty part in the bike.
Exactly. And she's like, she's got something to do on like, she's like on this like business call. And then Ben just kind of disappears. And then like he like goes on the road or whatever. And there's this kind of super nice feeling like it's not the end of their friendship. And it's not that they might never sleep together or whatever. And it's like, but it's also like, we're busy adults and we've got stuff to do in life. And like, life's too short to just like be like, oh, well, this isn't the end of the story. Like
right.
Giant, great big kiss. Like, it's really nice.
But don't you feel like there's also something maybe sort of very subtly tragic about the ending of that game? Like, I feel like the way that they leave each other is partially what you describe and partially also the sensation that maybe there was something there that didn't hit at the exact right moment and therefore has been missed. Yeah,
no, there is like a kind of sense of something being missed, but I feel like so like early on, you know, there's that really nice like little task where you have to like go and get the 3 items so that Maureen can fix your bike.
No, the adventure game.
Yes.
And it's early on, but there's like a bit. There's like when you're going to collect stuff, like he always when he comes back into the room with whatever item it is, like I think it's like the gas can or whatever, and he turns up
the forks.
Yeah, the forks.
So when I was a kid, by the way, like when I was a 10-year-old or whatever, whenever that game came out, however old I was, I remember the line like, "Where'd you get those forks?" And he goes, "Next to the knives and spoons." And I was like, as however old I was at the time, for some reason, that was the funniest fucking thing I had heard in a video game in my entire life.
Next to the knives and spoons.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, like
he has the
classic.
best voice. Like
Yeah.
that guy's the best voice.
I'm sorry. Continue your actual anecdote.
Anyway, so he comes back in with like the forks or like the I don't know the gas can or whatever, and he's got they put this like massive shit eating grin on his face.
he's so proud that he got that
proud
stupid
of
crap.
himself. And he expects Maureen to be like, you know, and like faint into his arms or something. And that's my favorite thing about this like initial thing is that he's got this huge shit-eating grin that he expects like her
she
to
just
be
keeps
like
wrenching away on the bike. Of course.
Yeah, she's just like whatever.
They did
cool.
not
She's
make an
just, like,
animation for Maureen acknowledging that you've accomplished anything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She's just welding that shit on like she doesn't care, and it's just like completely wonderful.
But she has a big fat smirk when she lowers the bike and it's done, and it's got the recoil booster on it or whatever.
Yeah.
But then you, of course, just drive away and set fire to her shop, and then, it's, you know, you don't see her for another 2 hours or whatever.
Well, I mean, she's got that grin, and then she says, like, tell me I'm awesome. Like, I'm awesome, right?
Yeah.
Or something. She says something like that. And there's, like, this moment I think Ben does say like you're awesome or something like that, and you're kind of like, oh, this is like really adorable, but like I don't know, it's a game that accepts that people are adults.
There's also something kind of charming about that each of their own kind of being too cool for school in terms of getting excited about what the other person does, but also wanting to be validated a little bit themselves. There's something kind of adorable.
It's really, it makes them both so likable and so.
But it definitely feels like at that moment when they first meet is when they're probably the most potentially likely for anything to ever happen. But that meeting ends up putting both their lives on trajectories that make it impossible by the end of the story in a way that's really good.
Yeah, and I
Full Throttle.
Welcome to the Full Throttle cast.
Whatever. Gotta open strong with Full Throttle.
Game, I know.
All the way.
It's great, but it's just great. A great game in general because like a lot of it is actually about Maureen. Like it is about her and her family and what happens to her, but it never says like she's someone who has to be rescued. In fact, she actually becomes kind of like a boss figure at the end, and she's just like you have to get through a minefield. Part of why they sort of drift apart is that she ends up sort of as a result of the events of the game sort of ascending into this rarefied
but there's a part in the middle where she also thinks that you killed her dad.
Yeah, that's true.
And I think when you get to the end of the story, even though she's like, oh, you didn't kill my dad.
Man, this is the most spoilery, like unwarned spoilery discussion.
We're on the 20th anniversary.
That's true. This is the
Full
20th.
Throttle.
That's true. This year is the 20th anniversary of Full Throttle.
Marty McFly traveled forward in time to the 20th anniversary of Full Throttle. 95, Full Throttle.
I thought it was 93. Okay.
No, 93 was Sam and Max Hit the Road.
There you go.
Oh, it's disgusting that game came out 2 decades ago.
Yep.
Yeah.
No.
We're old.
You know what's really funny though? Like this year was the first year at GDC that I got up the courage to say hello to Tim Shafer. And I was covered in pink paint because I was at the Wild Rumpus party where I was DJing. Yes. I was covered in like pink fluorescent paint, and like I actually kind of looked like one of those guys in the Full Throttle gang where they've got like the infrared goggles.
Cave fish.
The cave fish. I look like a cave fish person. And he met me and I was like introduced myself. I looked like an idiot. And I was like, hi. And then he was like, hi. And I was like, oh, I'm Cara. It's super nice to meet you. I like your work a lot. And he was like, thanks. You're the person who wrote that thing about Maureen, right? And I was like, yeah. And I expected him to be like, oh, I really enjoyed it. That was so nice. Thank you so much. Like he was like, oh. And I was like, oh no. In my brain, I was like, Tim Shafer is massively underwhelmed by me.
No, that actually just is added to the tome of people's first encounters with Tim Shafer at GDC.
Yeah.
That's just how that guy is, I think.
Man, my first encounter with Tim Shafer was also at GDC and was also Full Throttle related.
Oh, that was when it was back in San Jose. That was like 10 years ago. That was when Full Throttle was only 9 years old.
I know, weird.
Oh, God.
Yes, on this, the 20th anniversary of Full Throttle, I recount meeting Tim Shafer on the 9th anniversary of Full Throttle because I was wearing my Corley Motors t-shirt. I was wearing my like classic.
Oh, I remember this.
Yeah, which I think I've lost now. I can't find it anymore. But it's just it was the thing that was so great about it was that it was in an era way before this was like a fashionable thing to do, and even now this is not very common. LucasArts made a Full Throttle t-shirt that was just a Corley Motors t-shirt. It didn't say Full Throttle, didn't say LucasArts. It didn't tip its hand at all.
It was like a prop replica Corley Motors like cruise shirt, basically.
Yeah.
It had the logo that I think it said Can't Be a Corley. And it had the like awesome CM like wings logo. And I was wearing it just like on the streets of San Jose. And I remember I was walking like to or from the Game Developers Choice Awards at like 10 p.m. or whatever. And I just ran into Tim Shafer walking the other direction. And he was like, hey, I made that game. And I was like, oh, man, you're Tim Shafer. It was crazy because I was still in college at the time. And I was like, whoa. I was super excited about it.
I met Tim at GDC, but it wasn't Full Throttle related.
Oh, boo.
Yeah, whatever.
You're not in the canon. You can't be in the canon
I was
anymore.
sitting with Anita when she was about to get her ambassador award last year, and Tim came over and was just like, hi, I'm Tim. And I was like, I'm Danielle. I'm a friend of hers. I was just like, this is my only claim to fame that I could possibly... I'm with her. She's important. It was,
nice.
you know.
Anita was wearing 3 Corley Motors shirts,
yeah,
though, so it's relevant.
You know, and a bandana. No. Like...
But yeah, anyway, and then I met him a second time at GDC, and then he said to me, you had the pink on you. That's what he said.
So basically, every time you meet him, he will remember a previous thing about you.
And then give it a muted response.
Yeah, and just not care.
So next time he'll be like, I met you a second time.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the detail he remembers.
Anyway, I guess the moral of this story is, yes, I did write about Maureen, and it was underwhelming.
Good.
We've gotten to this point. I'm glad.
Man, totally surprising, but very comprehensive Full Throttle discussion happened.
It's right.
Yeah,
that
whatever.
Was
Totally
fine.
pretty
good.
But that article's
that
article's worth going back and looking up on RPS if you haven't read it.
Yeah,
People who are listening, it was good.
The whole of the series is really good. Can I just
The rest
say?
of them are fine.
All of SEXE is good.
Is that how you pronounce it? Sexy?
Well, everyone's been asking me that this GDC for some reason.
I like saying it in my head that way.
I usually say S.EXE, but
That's
then
how I
no
think
one
of
was
it.
getting the pun. Is the
Really?
problem?
She
Okay,
said
see.
sexecutable.
Yeah,
Executable!
because no one was getting the pun, and it was really starting to irritate me. People sometimes tweet me, and they're like, oh, "I only just got that pun."
Oh, God.
And it's been like what, like a year?
It's been a while.
Should follow it up with your next article series, master.bat.
Fuck off.
It's
not the new domain.
It actually just redirects to s.exe.
Exactly. Yes, it does.
Christ.
Oh man!
But it only opens up in one tab.
I feel like it's
Sorry.
Reproductive.sys.
.sys.
But yeah, no, I feel like it's like the best named column I've ever heard of. So
Yeah, it's a
I'm
good
proud
name.
of it.
Oh,
I'm
absolutely.
proud of it. It's a pun that I wouldn't have been able to make by myself without the internet assisting me. They did
It's an
assist
internet
me.
assisted pun.
It was like
That's how it's scored.
people on Twitter should be like, "Oh, you should make a pun on that," and then they're like, "Oh, that would be really funny," and I'm like, "It would be funny."
Like, pitching that series now.
Nice. Oh my God.
And then I stole it. So yeah, thanks internet. I don't know who it was on the internet.
Don't mention it. It wasn't me.
Okay.
And speaking of the tonal opposite of all of this, I was playing Cities Skylines.
That segue was like totally seamless.
A game about managing municipal infrastructure and zoning.
Yes.
This is so sexual.
It's not.
Okay, if you build a big enough city, there is surely one person in it who is aroused when the sewer backs up.
That's true.
Sure.
That's true.
That's fair enough.
Statistically.
Statistically,
Yes.
What's it?
There
It's
will be
called
someone.
Cities Skylines?
It's called Cities Skylines. It's actually a
There was
sequel.
the Cities XL?
Yeah, I thought that it was related to that, but I actually don't think it is at all.
What?
It's no. It's a sequel to games called Cities in Motion.
Okay.
Cities in Motion and Cities in Motion 2, which were developed by the same developer called Colossal something, I can't remember. And
And Paradox is bringing it out here.
yes, Paradox is the publisher and was also the publisher of Cities in Motion. And actually, this made me bummed out that I never played Cities in Motion 1 or 2 because they're entirely about public transportation, which I love. Like, I would love to play a SimCity-like a game that is totally focused on, like, trains and subways and buses and stuff.
This one has that, but you have to get to it.
Yeah, but this
get to it,
is
right.
like comprehensive city simulator. This
Yes.
game's goal
Yes.
is to be the game SimCity 2013 promised you that it would be, right?
It is
Precisely.
shocking how similar it is. I mean, similar in terms of like general visual style and kind of scope of features. I can't.
It has curved roads that you drag colored lines along the edges of to zone, right?
Yes, it is the exact same general like paradigm of
Chris
zoning
Tilton
and
did the
construction.
soundtrack. No, he didn't.
No. I haven't even heard any music yet.
Just
actually.
play
Never
the
mind.
SimCity
Oh, it
soundtrack
happened?
over this. and
Yeah.
It
then-
happens when you start doing really well.
Oh,
And like
okay.
you get
I
really
am not
prosperous.
doing really
and then
well,
the little
yeah.
do-do-do. Yes.
I am doing poorly.
Wait, what happens?
Like when you start doing really well, then
No, but
the
what
music
does it do?
starts playing. It's do-do-do-do-do-do.
Okay, it's a circus song?
It's circus music.
It
No,
plays like Entrance of the
it's like a
Gladiators?
little, it's like a little fanfare, but it's like a light looping little fanfare kind of thing. It's nice.
Oh wait, you know what? I have heard music, but my music is like very somber and portentous. I just remembered now. It's like ba 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 ba. It actually totally is. It's like
Yeah.
it's bizarre.
I've had some bad cities go down poorly.
Yeah.
That's
Well, I
the
just
sad music
didn't.
as well.
One of the things that so this game plants a flag in the ground instantly the second you sort of see your initial city plot, and are told to start doing anything. And that flag is, this will be the game that you wanted if you bought the previous SimCity game and were disappointed. Like, that is the claim that this game stakes. Like, there's no ambiguity about that whatsoever, and it's actually very.
How is that the case? Does it make a joke about like server-side processing or something?
No. I just mean like in every aspect of itself. There's no meta. Element
like
to
how
that.
it starts with the strip of interstate with the two little on-ramps
connectors
poking
and,
out.
like, the way the zoning rules work, and even just like when you zoom all the way out and you look at your plot of land, it just looks like how it looks. I mean, it just looks the same. I mean, in a way that pre-SimCity 2013 games looked different.
That was 2013, right?
I think so.
It was the day I started at Polygon, March 4th, 2013.
I actually have like a super good story about
Wait, how good is it?
It's super good.
Super good.
Super good. So like last year at GDC, I got in an Uber with a guy who was really into video games, it turned out. And like he only played, I said, I'm going to the Game Developers Conference. He's like, okay. And
This
like
is the driver or another passenger?
No, the driver, the Uber driver.
Okay.
And like, and there's always this kind of like awkward silence where you're like, what is he going to say about video games? Because it's usually bad. So like anyone who's like not a massive nerd like us, you're just like, oh no, like they're going to say something awful or going to be like, oh, video games, gross or something like that.
Sure.
And there's this kind of little silence. And then he said, oh, I really like video games. I mostly just play SimCity, right? And I was like, oh,
yeah,
that's nice.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Have you played the new one? He's like, yes, in a kind of tone that was really indignant. And I was like, oh no, now it's going to go wrong for me. Right. And so then I was like, oh, what did you think of it? And he said, oh my God, it's a complete travesty. They've done it all wrong. And apparently for him, the maps were way too small.
Yeah.
This was his thing about
the Uber driver was
the
like a
maps were
SimCity
too
4
small.
lord or whatever.
Yeah.
Just way too small for the Uber driver, just not having it, just completely outraged.
I mean, he's not wrong.
You got to
He was-
find this guy and tell him to play Cities Skylines.
Right? I hope he's listening. But anyway, what he eventually told me was he was so angry about this SimCity that he took the box. He'd bought a physical copy of this game. He took the box, drove to the Maxis headquarters.
Oh my God. In his Uber car.
Yeah.
Set it on fire.
Oh my God.
And threw it at the building. And I was like, what? Like, and I was sitting in the back of the car, like, what?
That's an impressive
And then
thing
he's like,
to cop to.
what games have you worked on? Shit. Fuck.
Oh my
Just sitting there
God.
going, okay, so this makes me feel like this guy might
God, the arc of sort of the safety of that conversation of like,
Yeah.
oh, so you like video games. He's either going to then say something really shitty or ask you when the new like hahd DLC comes out. Then it's like, oh no, I'm a really big SimCity enthusiast. Oh, cool, awesome. But the last one I hated so much that I burned it and threw it at an office building.
I was like, wow, that's anger. That's real anger.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a video game making a person angry.
Yes,
And
it is.
now, probably because of the insurance increase after people started throwing flaming SimCity boxes at them, Maxis is out of business.
Oh,
Right? Maybe.
yeah.
Thanks,
close
Uber.
to that.
Another thing Uber's
Uber
ruining in the
destroyed
Bay
that.
Area.
I just picture him like making a SimCity version of like where the Maxis building is.
He's planning it.
Like he's planning it out in the game, and then he gets in his Uber
God,
car.
he's grumbling. He's
and
like, oh,
just
fine,
like,
I'll
yes.
use a taxi cab in SimCity because the Uber DLC never came out.
Yes! Oh my God!
Fucking Uber DLC probably would exist in SimCity
Oh,
if
it
that company was
probably
still around.
would.
It's
Yeah.
probably...
There's H&M DLC in like The Sims.
Yeah, you can
know?
buy... You can have a Prius or something, can't you? Aren't there like...
Yeah, there's some car company has a thing.
Oh my
Yeah.
God!
The thing is, so, like, I really like encountering people who just have the one game they play.
It's
Because
really
it's
charming.
like evidence
Yeah.
of a thing about games that is just not like how other things are, right?
Yeah.
Like you, and I've met people like this. I had a friend who just played Elder Scrolls games and had been playing them since like Daggerfall. He's not really a video game person. Like, just not really someone who like pays attention to video game websites or plays videos. But like somehow, since long before that series was a household name, like it was with Oblivion, just like must have somehow encountered Daggerfall someday in the fucking 90s and just was like, this is fun. And that's just what, and like, ever since, like 15 years later, but no other games really. That's just that. I find that such a fascinating phenomenon.
Really is.
Yeah. I feel like I was that person for a little while just with Tomb Raider. My parents used to buy me a Tomb Raider every Christmas, basically.
Huh.
That's kind of awesome.
Yeah.
That's an interesting one, because usually it doesn't happen with games like that are just like a single player linear thing that you finish.
Yeah, and they used to buy me a Tomb Raider every year, I think, just because I was so taken with the first one. I was like, wow, this is amazing. And as
maybe they thought that was what video games were.
yeah. And like, I
mean, it kind of was for like that game reached a sort of level of cultural permeation that is rare in its heyday. I mean, you know, like Tomb Raider was huge.
Maybe they thought that's what video games are for girls. There's a woman on the box, and like, here's the girl game or something.
Well,
I don't know.
I think that it was, I think it was purely that they were like, wow, there's like a video game that has a woman character in it. Like, clearly this might be good for my daughter. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, they were slightly taken aback by like the kind of over-sexualization of her in the media, I think.
Sure.
So they were kind of cautious about that, but they were definitely, well, and look at me now, like massively over-sexualized. So obviously it's all gone wrong. But but I mean, I feel like they kind of recognized something in it, which was that it is actually kind of a cool role model to have like a woman go adventuring, doing action-y stuff seem like a cool thing for them. But also at the same time, I was a massive history nerd. So they were obviously like, oh, you know, she's an archaeologist, so this is like Cara's thing.
So when she fights dinosaurs in historically accurate ways, you know.
it's what historians do. They like choke out a crocodile.
That's perfect.
Yeah, but it was kind of fun. I mean, as we all know, the Tomb Raiders got steadily worse.
And then they started to get better.
And then they started to get better.
Improve a bit,
Yeah. But yeah, like, I think when it got to Angel of Darkness was a slow realization that, like, even though she looked cool and had, like lots of, like, black eyeliner.
For a long time, right? Because that was...
Yeah, this sounds like a decade or
it was
something.
like, well, actually, that one I ordered and paid for myself, which made it worse, obviously, because it was terrible. Right. But, yeah, like, I was like, oh, she's got cool black eyeliner. It looks a bit like Buffy the Vampire Slayer this time, right? It's going to be amazing! And then it's just like, she can't even walk, you know?
Was that one before or after Underworld? Was that before Underworld?
I think it was before.
Yeah, before. Because
Underworld was starting, I think, the ascent back up.
It was. So Underworld is a great game. I loved it. But the story was maybe the stupidest thing I've ever encountered, like in any game that I've ever played ever. But I hadn't played.
That's big.
No, I know.
That's big talk.
I know it was, but it was like something. But the thing is, I don't know. Maybe I'm overstating it a little bit, but it doesn't matter because the distinction between when you're that low,
totally.
like, what's really the difference?
Yeah.
But I hadn't played a Tomb Raider game in several years before that because I hadn't played any of the sort of like modern ones.
Yeah.
You know, and it just made me really wonder, what the hell did I miss? Like, in the sort of, like,
going from Tomb Raider
canon of the plot of these games that, like, would have taken the game on the trajectory from, like, sort of pseudo-archaeologist person, like, raids tombs and, like, fights, like, dinosaurs and monsters. Or not monsters, but, like, you know.
Sort of.
I guess.
Weird animal creatures.
Weird animal creatures. What on earth would take it to the point where there's, like, a resurrected zombie mom and, like a dark version in heels? Like, what happened? Like, what are the beats that I missed that, like, I should have just gone on Wikipedia, I guess, but I kind of prefer not knowing.
It's
and, like,
better
suddenly
this way,
is
Imagine that had just been Tomb Raider 2.
Oh, God!
Well, I mean, Legend was good because they just reworked the whole game so that it wasn't like the camera wasn't super annoying and you weren't on a grid system anymore and you weren't like, it wasn't all broken. That was super great. But like I reckon the best Tomb Raider for my money is actually Anniversary, where they remade the first one. Cool. It was like delightful and really great, and like, I mean, it didn't have some of the atmosphere of the first one.
Sure.
I feel like the first one has like, it's dark and murky and it's shadowy and it's gross, isn't it? Like, it's, I don't know, I really like the first Tomb Raider because it's grungy and weird.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, it didn't have as much of that, but it was like, there was so the story was minimal. You know, these days I'm getting incredibly annoyed, particularly with AAA games that talk too much at me. I'm like, please could you just be silent for a while? I don't want to hear a voice. I just want to be by myself in a single player game. I don't want anyone yelling at me or telling me that there's a rock there because I can see the rock and I'm avoiding it already, you know? Like,
ironically, that's actually why I enjoyed Underworld so much, is that when it wasn't in an incredibly disgustingly lore-heavy, like, nonsensical cutscene, you were just kind of alone in this, like, big, huge, overwhelming environment, like, with a lot of silence and
that's what Tomb Raider is.
The one that came out after Underworld was in that vein, but did not have that insanity, right? Or wasn't Underworld sort of the beginning of a series of reasonably related sort of tech and idea-wise Tomb Raiders? I don't really know. I haven't played a Tomb Raider since 1.
They rebooted it after Underworld.
Okay.
And there was also Guardian of Light, which was
Guardian
amazing.
Of Light was cool. Sort of just a totally separate thing.
It's its own, totally its own thing. But it was.
I feel like
out of nowhere.
I feel like we flew a million miles away from City Skylines without actually talking about it, because Danielle, you'd been playing a bunch of it. But Cara, when you were saying you want a game that doesn't talk to you, I was like, oh, City Skylines is what you should play. Then I remembered that at the top of that game, it has its own in-universe Twitter feed, which is
great. It's actually really funny.
So it seems like instead of the population just being random quotes, like in the most recent SimCity, they'll like petition City Hall and you can click on them and your advisors tell you stuff.
They have little thought bubbles.
Yeah, in City Skylines, there's just the regional Twitter feed for your city shows up, so people are like, hashtag smog, really annoying or whatever.
Like, the usage of hashtags is actually really clever and hilarious.
Well, they use hashtags the way that a person who does not understand hashtags uses hashtags.
Which is you have to
sarcastic hashtags.
Yeah. No, it's like mom hashtags.
It's like naively sarcastic hashtags, where they don't realize that it comes off as sarcastic.
Right, where it's like getting hashtag psyched for the big sports event, hashtag tonight. Like, okay,
exactly.
No one will click
the way most nonprofits use
Here's an example. Right. Here's an example of a tweet from like when I was just playing and I couldn't figure out how sewage worked.
Yes.
The streets are hashtag flooding with hashtag sewage. The hashtag smell is just overwhelming. It was a totally authentic usage of how a sort of like kind of not super internet oriented person who still wants to like get on and complain to their 7 followers about how their municipal service is failing them is like, that just seems totally authentic to me about how that person would tweet.
It's really great. And they do it in a positive way too, where it's like, our hashtag mayor is the best, when like you create like a sewage plant or something and it's like, yay. It's really kind of adorable.
What you were saying is like you couldn't figure out the sewage system was like actually attached to the water.
Yeah, the same.
It's a little weird.
You, Chris and Danielle both bombed a million cities with
exactly,
poo.
Because I
did.
I had the poo is overflowing icon, and I'm like,
hashtag poo.
And I tried to select.
I had no idea what to do at first.
I tried to select the sort of garbage, utility, and it was like, oh, you can't build garbage facilities until you have 200 people or 500 people or something. And I'm like, oh no. And I eventually...
How can I grow this city when it's full of poo? How did I make it big enough?
I was like, this seems impossible. Because like, no one else is going to want to move into a pooey city. So how are they going to make enough of them to clean up the poo? It's like terrible catch-22.
Oh my God. Yes. I got it.
But then I realized that that water pipes are actually like double pipes. There's 2 pipes side by side.
Thank God.
Yes, and one of them is in and carries water, and one of them is out and carries sewage.
They're green and blue.
And so you have to build separate water treatment and like sewage exhaust facilities, and you have to be careful that you build the sewage downstream from the like water piping.
Oh, because I imagine you start with the shittiest, with the worst sewage treatment plant that just will barf sewage out into the water supply.
Right.
Yep.
So
gross.
And like the water like shows you which direction the flow is, so that you can build downstream, so that you aren't pumping.
This is my key SimCity question, because the most recent SimCity was all about data visualization. Like that was actually hands down my favorite part of the new SimCity, and it's a part that I think the shortcomings of that game cannot take away from it. Is that like 3D, where it all wipes to like white and just shadows of your city and has graphs that come up and stuff. But the most ridiculous one of those is the sewage graph, because it's just blobs of poo floating around your city, where there's just sort of that like, just like those, just like
little brown rivers,
just like cow pies just zipping all over the place. The City Skylines have the cow pie visualization? Because I saw that it has some visualizations. Does it have the poo flying around?
I didn't
not
see
as
poo
slick.
flying
Yeah,
around,
it's
no.
not as. It's not as slick as.
So it's like an early access game, and that feature is coming later.
Hopefully, the all poo features are coming.
Yeah.
It has
Patch number 2.
It has, as with like seemingly all the features of this game, it has essentially the same basic approach to data visualization, which is that when you select, for example, like when you go into the menu that you use to build water utility components or electricity or whatever, it
gives you like that the minimalized info view,
view that shows you the reach of your
so
current.
Weird.
Yeah, it has that. It's just not as like it's not quite as sort of sparkly and flashy as the Maxis SimCity.
So flashy in SimCity.
I know, it really was. It's still useful. It still gives you information.
Yeah, useful. So it's like the Android version.
Oh,
Well, this also is
go away.
is useful in the way that it like works offline and it has everything about it. I haven't encountered any problems with the game itself other than my own misunderstanding of something. Like it's and it supports tons of modding stuff. They were upfront about that right away, the team, and they're like, you don't like the way our houses look? Go right into the editor and make your own houses, which is cool. They kind of have the spirit of we made a game that is exactly what y'all wanted. Here it is, and it's $30 too, which is kind of cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
it also feels like it's
lower price title.
a little less forgiving than SimCity, which allowed you to really bounce back from like almost anything, which does make it a little harder to get started in this one.
So this game is predictably way more brutal.
Yeah, I don't know if it's like super brutal necessarily, but like it definitely is. It definitely feels less kind of elastic than the Maxis one, which really felt like it was always ready to kind of bounce you back.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah.
But I don't think that's a bad thing. It just means that when you're getting started, you might have a little more trial and error. What was the other thing I was going to say? Oh yeah, to the point about like Cara, you brought up the notion of someone who like basically just plays SimCity. I think one of the reasons this game approximates SimCity, the Maxis game, so much is that this really is kind of almost a one game genre. I mean, it's not. There are a bunch of European city builders, but in terms of successful city builders that are specifically in the modern era and specifically have to do with urban zoning, SimCity is really the one successful one. I mean, there were Cities XL, there was, which failed, that developer failed. And like most attempts to exist in that genre have really not been very successful. SimCity for decades is pretty much like the big series. And most other successful full city builders, I feel like, have carved out a different niche. They've been
like Inno or Tropico.
Yes, they've been historical games, or they've been set in environments that are not kind of like North American or European modern urban environments. And I remember when we were talking a lot about the Maxis SimCity game, Nick was kind of saying, on the one hand, he couldn't believe that this exists, that like Electronic Arts spent this money to make this kind of game now in this era. It just seems so like almost anachronistic given what large publishers tend to prioritize these days. And also that it kind of seemed like this was sort of the last chance. Like if they fuck that up, it's like, well, now what are we going to do? Like the company that makes this didn't do it well. And now like, is that it? We're just done. Now Maxis is closed for that matter.
Yeah.
Which is why I imagine a developer that has some, that had previously tried their hand at some kind of modern urban city builder just kind of decided like, let's just do that. Let's just do that exact thing and try not to mess it up in the way that they messed it up. It is so much more of a clone than I am accustomed to seeing or playing, but in a genre that is generally not cloned because it's so goddamn complicated and huge. Usually games that are cloned are like little puzzle games or kind of shit, like sort of cheaper first-person shooters or
mobile games.
Mobile games, yeah. Usually things that are cloned this closely are things that can be quickly reproduced. But this is such an incredibly complex game with so many moving parts and so many assets, and I imagine must have taken a lot of resources to produce at this level.
Let's see if it's fun after 2 hours.
I've definitely read that it is. I definitely read that it is that. But it's just I'm not saying this as like a qualitative judgment. It's just a strange thing to experience because you don't usually experience that with games that are this complex and large and unusual.
I was thinking actually a lot about SimCity's legacy because Maxis is closed, and like I did end up like writing a while ago. I wrote a thing about American roads because I was spending quite a lot of time here, and like I don't know, there's something really special about roads in the US in particular. Like it's such a road country and very road based. But I was thinking
Thanks,
when I was
Eisenhower.
I was thinking when I was like flying right across the middle of the US, like you look down and there's like a grid pattern. All of the cities are grid patterns, like all of them. Yeah. Although like San Francisco is a little windy and hillier than usual, but it's like
there are a lot of windy cities, but the grid pattern is common.
Yeah, and so. And I thought when I was flying across the US, I was thinking about how I had spoken to the curator of the British Map Library, and he said that SimCity would go down as one of the most prominent maps of the 20th century. And I was like, what?
That's really
and he said,
yeah.
well, maps to me, it's really obvious that maps to me are a record of like how society thinks about something, right? And it's really obvious to me exactly who made SimCity, because it was definitely not a European who made it.
Sure.
And it's like got this kind of embedded attitude into it. So like it's like virgin land. No one's here. Excuse me. And like
sure.
There's no one who lives here, so we can just like do whatever the hell we like. Like, let's lay like 50 roads down. Let's put like a crap load of shit here. Like, and we're gonna knock it down. Like the bulldoze function, we're gonna all knock it down, and everything's on a grid system, and everything's like grid orientated.
And cars are the main form of traversal.
Cars are, and like in the original SimCity 2000, I think the way that you got people to come to your city was you built a highway to the edge of the map.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
they
it's
still,
like
they
that way
still
too.
essentially use that.
Yeah, and it's like there's like he was like you can tell that this was made like by an American person about their life, and like most maps dating back to like the beginning of maps, like you can tell something about that person from the way that they were making the map. And it's like super fascinating the way that he was thinking about like all of the maps and how this sits in history, and like how he shows it in the British Map Library. It's
That's
like
really cool.
It's incredible. It's really cool to think about. And so so I was like, because I started thinking about what a European version of SimCity would look like.
Yeah.
And it would be like, just territory wars, because you can't build anywhere because someone else has already built a thing there. And there's a castle there that you have to spend money upkeeping.
Sure.
And then there's like a,
Crusader Kings.
Yeah, exactly. So it's all
Crusader Kings is the SimCity of Europe.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Well, what's funny is that the SimCity model has kind of ended up. Well, there's probably a lot of. I suspect that what he's describing is very true in terms of its conception. It has now kind of become a default model for city builders generally, because like one of the series I love dearly, I've talked about a lot on this podcast, is the Anno games, which are European city builders with sort of somewhat of a more economic focus than SimCity has, which is a lot more about zoning and building. The Anno games are a lot more about kind of trade and managing economies. And what's funny is that those games kind of start out on sort of islands where you're essentially colonizing islands. Like you're based, so it's and there you're building roads, but the roads are for people to walk on, not cars. Except you end up just building grids anyway, because that's just kind of well, I don't know what the reasons for that are. Could be, there's probably a number of reasons. One of them is probably just that 90-degree angles are computationally like easier to deal with. But it's also, I think, probably just because the SimCity model of like how to build things is kind of just what it is now. Like if you're building a builder game on a computer, like
it's weird because I think you're right though that lines are straight, because the easiest tool for someone to understand with a mouse is to drag from one point to another point and for it to make a straight line. Like it was revelatory when the new SimCity allowed you to paint curves.
Yeah,
because the system underneath had to be doing insane juggling to know how to wedge all the buildings in and have it look naturalistic and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Well, I always try. I remember I'd spent a lot of time trying with SimCity to build like interestingly windy communities.
Right, but you would just make like gross pixel art curves that cars would just go, Or you mean with new SimCity?
No, I mean the new SimCity.
Oh.
And it was really cool, but it's also because the goddamn maps are so small, like the guy was complaining about, you have to give up
Set it on fire.
You have to sacrifice so much density to do anything other than 90-degree angles, because the second you start doing not 90-degree angles, you're technically wasting space.
Yeah.
And so I got really frustrated because I'm like, I want to make like a big crazy London-esque, like sort of just weird like concentric circle sprawl thing. But you just can't. You just can't do it.
I feel like us and the Romans obsessed with 90-degree angles. Just like the Romans were all about that shit. They were just like, if it's not straight, I don't want it to exist. Right? We're just gonna bulldoze through this mountain. You know, like.
Is that true?
I mean, they didn't obviously bulldoze a mountain, but they were very concerned. They're very, very concerned with it was all built towards the army, right? Because they were an army society, so they pretty much they were military, and they were like. It actually takes less time to walk in straight lines to go anywhere. So they figured out that if they wanted their army to get anywhere quick, they had to start making straight lines.
Huh.
So they made straight lines like across all of Europe, which are actually the ley lines that everything now in Europe is built on. Like everything is a Roman road, except we've just put another layer of tarmac on the top.
Yeah.
And so like all of it is just like, if you dig down, like it's pretty much just like, oh, Romans built this road, you know. But it's kind of weird, but. Kind of, they kind of...
Well, I think part of what this speaks to also is the difference between things arising organically and things being designed.
Yes.
Right? Like, if you make a game where the objective is to build something from nothing, you're going to have more of a kind of, like, designed... sort of functional.
It shows
result.
how political design is as well. Like all of the reasons that we do these things are entirely political. These maps are inherently political. They give you a political statement because it's like you were saying, that one map is like islands and like colonization, which says something about like Europe in general. And then there's also like SimCity is, you know, there's this virgin land idea where there's like no one there, but actually obviously
there
when people got here, there were people here. So it's really interesting that all of this politics is like deeply embedded in the design of like this, but it also reflects like, the Romans are pretty much designing for the military. And so everything was designed and built towards that.
Now that we have curved roads as a sort of common knowledge block in builder games, because I know like City Skylines has curved roads, and its curved road tool, I mean, just from watching you guys play, seems better than SimCity's curved road tool. Because SimCity's curved road tool was like, kind of throw it up and hope, like guess that your curve is going to work, whereas in City Skylines you place a point and then you place the other then you place an angle, like it's a 2-click operation,
right?
But anyway, now that exists as a common vocabulary, it would be interesting for someone to take that and maybe someone has, but to take that and put it into a game where you're given complicated natural terrain and where terraforming actually
simply be
where terraforming has an immense cost, and then make you actually build.
I would love that.
Weird European cities that are clearly formed around rivers and around mountains, or like insane like super high mountain regions of Asia or whatever, like where you have to farm up into the terrain, where you kind of get a little of that feeling of Civ, but like you could still drag and make a road, but it costs a shitload unless you form it into the shape of the valley, and then you start zoning out from there.
Right.
So you end up getting these cities that are built into beautiful...
You could also have like incredibly valuable natural resources in areas like that incentivize you to do that, so you don't just ignore the...
Right, and then if you build the majestic bridge that goes across the cliff, cool, but you know that you had to like exist for 80 years as a city or something to raise enough money to build that bridge.
That's a totally like valid. I feel like there are a lot of things you could do to incentivize players to bother with stuff like that. Because again, to bring up the Anno games, my friend Sophie and I, when we played cooperatively, we put so much time and effort into like building up towards the goddamn big cathedral. I think I've mentioned this before on the podcast, and it was such an amazing sort of like target to shoot for. It seemed so incredible that like we diverted so many resources and so much effort to working towards it. And I think you could probably make a game that made you not made you, but like encouraged you to contend with a lot more of these weird constraints if you introduced at least somewhat lighter of a goal, or at least aspirational kind of structure.
Well,
that,
if you have
made you, because part of, I think one of the things that I think is cool about the Anno games that is different about SimCity, for example, which has this very much like blank slate, like just build thing. In the Anno games, you know that because you're playing in a medieval, well, they're set in different time periods, but this was Anno, I guess 1404, I think. Okay. Because you're playing in sort of a medieval era, it comes with all of the like associations that like a cathedral is like an incredibly prestigious like centerpiece of a town of this era, and like it just felt like a thing I wanted to achieve because it was so cool. And I feel like when you provide players with a very specific setting and kind of like suite of aesthetic like furnishings, it's a lot easier to get yourself psyched up for that kind of intangible goal, even though it wasn't like I was required to do that, or it was necessarily. I don't even know what it would be.
You could also encourage people through the data visualization stuff that SimCity does too, though, or if you are about to place a road and you just get a heat map of where resources are or where costs are. Because like playing Off-World Trading Company, that game does a very good job of really sort of, through its data visualization, incentivizing where to place your base, how to cluster your structures together and stuff, just because it's like it's economically way more in your favor to do very specific actions, and you end up forming your resources. Just you conform to the geology of the space in a way that you don't in games where it's not all about that. I don't know.
We're also in an era where sort of YouTube sharing and like screenshot and animated GIF sharing is such that there's kind of this weird like meta incentive to do really like incredible things in your sort of creativity driven game.
I imagine as soon as the curves went in, dicks started appearing on everyone.
I'm sure that's the case.
Yeah, I mean, see Besiege.
Yes, exactly.
For where insane shit and probably dicks are just popping up everywhere. Yeah. How moddable is City Skyline? Because I know Anno 2070 is not. The Anno games are not very moddable. Like there's some. I've looked it up. There's a little bit of stuff about how to fuck with stuff. So when you pointed out that a moddable city builder existed, it would be better in an Anno game because of the economic focus. But man, I want a total conversion that is just Rapture.
Yes.
Oh man.
Put a water shader over the entire thing, replace the birds with fish, and have you just build weird neon things and then have it run an insane financial model over it. Where's that? Firaxis, get on that shit. Like, Jesus.
Well, I feel like you could do that.
Yeah, that would be such an intense total conversion.
They're extremely mod friendly. Which I know, sorry, I'm like looking at their site right now, but they're one of the main things when I first was sort of jumping into this. One of the first data points is like, we love mods. Here's your mod. Share your mod. And I was sort of digging into things other people had
I've replaced the interstate on and off ramp with the bathysphere, and I've replaced everything else.
What have you seen? Have you seen any cool things people have done yet?
Somebody made, an entire like a working city of Monaco, like a giant. Cool. Amazing, incredible, massive.
Did they actually build it with the rules, or did they use the mod tools to make it in create mode or something?
I mean, they did it with the general rules. It's just sort of the normal thing. But it was something that's just available immediately, like yesterday, even before the game came out. It was just sort of like, here are some cool things it's shipping with.
Who made it?
It was somebody who does Let's Plays. I can look it up, but it's somebody who did a Let's Play just showing how to make this cool, amazing
and then
working city.
They just ship the built city, or they link to it. Interesting.
So you can just play with it out of the box, just playing with the game.
That's so funny because SimCity 1 for DOS came with its own bad versions of a bunch of cities, including San Francisco and a a couple places like that.
Yeah, it did.
Does this have disasters? We should take a break. What am I doing? We're so deep into this episode. Holy crap! We should take a break.
Video games.
Do you guys like underpants?
I do.
I wear them every single day.
Wow.
I like that.
I wear them almost every day.
Almost every day. Let's be honest. Then maybe what you would like is this week's sponsor, MeUndies.
Wow.
MeUndies.com is a website that sells a lot of underpants and various undergarments of all
cool
kinds.
Designs.
They've got some cool designs.
They got like basically any shape and size of things to, warm or support your body underneath your clothes. They've got them.
Yeah, Cara, if you're like jet setting around the world, you probably need some like really high quality, resilient, comfortable underwear.
Right.
So you could go to MeUndies.com/thumbs, get 20% off and free shipping to wherever you're staying.
On your first
like
order.
Steve Gaynor's house.
Yeah.
I could send them to Steve Gaynor's
You could get
house.
cat underwear.
You could ship some weirdly
I
patterned
think Steve
underpants.
actually owns some MeUndies, by the way.
Oh, really?
So you could wear his MeUndies when you're there.
When you
True.
dress up as
So
him.
what I was thinking what I would do when I got there was essentially raid his wardrobe, dress up as Steve Gaynor, draw on a beard, the distinctive Steve Gaynor beard, and then just walk around town introducing myself as
In
Steve
your
Gaynor.
MeUndies.
Wear his MeUndies.
I'll
Yes.
wear his
So you should do
MeUndies.
this, and you should send the picture to MeUndies and say, MeUndies.com/thumbs, save me 20% off this Steve Gaynor underpants disguise.
Okay, I will do that.
Okay.
Excellent.
Thanks, MeUndies.
Thank you, MeUndies.
Video
We'd also like to thank NatureBox for sponsoring this episode of Idle Thumbs. NatureBox is a delicious snack subscription service. They will deliver delicious, weird, normal,
Weird and normal.
weird and or normal snacks to your
Whichever
house
one you like.
for a price that is good. If you go to naturebox.com/thumbs, you can get a sample pack containing a bunch of little
four sort of trial
of,
size snacks.
Yep.
And a full size snack of your choosing. I might recommend any sort of like dusted peas or dried pineapple slices.
Excellent.
Which I love beyond all things. So you can get that for a nominal shipping charge. It is
$2.
cheap. Yep. NatureBox also now ships to Canada, which is great. People ask us about that all the time. Go to naturebox.com/thumbs. All of the delicious treats that you love delivered straight to your home.
Even if you don't decide to keep NatureBox, the amount of effort that it takes to have this internet site just send you a bunch of snacks for $2 is next to nothing.
True.
So go to
It is
naturebox.com/thumbs, support the podcast, get snacks for $2. If you like it, which you probably will, then you can keep getting them. But man, think about the effort and out on just getting this sample box of snacks to your house.
It's true.
It's low.
Thanks, NatureBox. NatureBox.com/thumbs.
And then you could have a hamster game.
Oh
You
my
could probably
God.
also mod it to make a hamster game.
Hamster
You
City.
could.
You could probably
Hamster
make it called-
Cities XL.
Oh my god, that would be amazing. I am so into hamster games. Have you seen all those Japanese hamster games? Oh my
No.
god, they're the best. Okay,
I didn't know
anyway.
this was a thing.
It is a huge thing in Japan.
And we're back.
We're back! Podcast. Whoa! Oh, shit!
I found the box quote for extensive modding support on Cities Skylines.
Wait,
if
is the
anybody's
box quote
interested.
literally just extensive modding support?
I mean, that's the bold header, but then there's language supporting it. So, there's even more. There's a head and there's a...
It says make Monaco, make your own Rapture.
Yeah, that would be really cool. It says build or improve on existing maps and structures. You can then import them into the game, share them, as well as download the creations of other city builders on the Steam Workshop. So that's cool.
Cool.
Cool game.
Nice.
I played another cool game.
What is it?
Was it? Are you going to say White Knight?
Well, I was going to talk about White Knight after that.
Oh.
We can talk about White Knight now, though. I played a game that has cool ideas, but isn't entirely cool, called
Okay,
White
go ahead.
Knight. White Knight is a horror game. A third-person, stylish, noir looking.
Is this Night
Wow.
N-I-G-H-T or Night? Like, is it a pun?
N-I-G-H-T.
Oh, it's a play on words.
It is. It certainly is. It's sort of mixing a ghost story and a haunted mansion in Bahston, in the Bahston area,
Oh, hey.
with
Non-grid city.
no, it's a non-grid city. Yes, Bahston is a mess. If you want to look at it like a grid,
Boston is a mess.
there are no grids. It was built in the times of horses and such.
messes.
So lots of horse messes, indeed.
So White Knight. Sorry,
White
I
Knight-
ruined it.
That's okay. It's
The
combining
little like sewage icon in that game is a horse poop. Not
exactly.
regular
It's
poop.
it's a horse poop, not human poop. That's just everywhere. So White Knight.
They like it that way. What? Boston?
You like it that way. Whatever. Boston, there's shit in the streets. What are you going to do with that dirty water?
My favorite
Anyway.
thing about this is because Danielle realized it was based in Boston, the entire time we were streaming this the other
Yes.
night, the entire time we were streaming it, every single diary that we came across, she
I read
read it entirely in the Boston accent.
My natural accent. That's right. I did. Well, because it's also kind of a hahd-boiled detective story.
Yeah.
That's also what's going on. Sorry, I'll talk like a normal person. So it has a really cool premise and it looks really cool. It's all monochromatic. It's black and white, and it controls much like the old Resident Evil games, sort of tank controls, cinematic camera angles that aren't necessarily functional.
No.
And you are exploring this mansion. You need to turn lights on or have a match on, or you will be basically killed by a ghost. So you need to have light to keep yourself safe. And you're solving sort of Resident Evil style kind of environmental puzzles as you're going along.
I guess the problem
a lot of locks and keys.
Locks and keys, and finding light switches in the dark and things like that. Yeah.
And you can't save unless the lights are on, basically.
Right.
And but the thing about it is because it's monochromatic, it adds like this extra layer of like annoyance to the original Resident Evil experience.
It's really hard to tell what anything is.
The camera angles are just like interminable, and it's like your guy walks really slowly and drives like a tank.
Yeah.
And like the whole thing is just like, I don't know what this is. I can't see anything. Like I've been killed by a ghost.
Exactly. It's a little annoying because I think the writing is actually pretty good.
Yeah.
There's a really intriguing story that's being hinted at. I mean, I'm only maybe an hour and a half in or so. I'm going to play more. I'm going to give it more of a shot. But it feels like this game is stylish
at the expense of everything else.
Of being functional.
That's a thing that
which
happens.
really sucks. I mean, there was something I was sort of showing the stream. There's a really unnecessary cut at this really annoying place. So you're walking left to right, and there's also no map system. So the fact that the camera is cutting stylishly is really, really unfortunate because I never had a sense of where I was in this house. And it's not exactly a crazed layout. It's a mansion, but it's really difficult to sense where you are. There's this one particular cut. When you're approaching a couch, you save at couches because you have a rest. That's kind of the fiction. You're injured, and that's why you've come into this house. You're staying for whatever reason, but to have a rest is to save. And so you're approaching a couch, and it's sort of a wide angle. And it's slightly canted wide angle, and your character is approaching from left to right. In the middle of this, for about 3 steps, so it's only like a few frames, the camera zooms in crazily on the couch from a slightly different angle. So you're trying to walk, and then all of a sudden the camera crazily moves in while you're trying to walk, and then it cuts back to the same canted sort of side angle, wider angle, and it's incredibly disorienting because the first few times I approached the couch, I thought I was going the wrong direction as soon as I got close enough, and then I walked back. I think it's supposed to be stylishly indicating that the couch is an object of interest.
Right.
However, doing so with a really dramatic camera angle that's cutting crazily is not
the other game that does that, but it's like, it's also like kind of unintentionally very hilarious.
Sure.
Is Deadly Premonition stairwells.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
They're amazing.
There's a lot of Deadly Premonition that feels like it,
I don't remember the stairwell.
Okay, so the stairwells are amazing because there's like a kind of, it'll have like the camera's kind of looking down onto like the curve of the stairwell.
Right.
And you come down, like you're like directing your character down according to where the camera is. Except then it switches, and then you start basically moonwalking backwards around the stairs. And then you can't figure out where you are, and it's just like stairs are like really difficult.
It's really true.
And it's adorable and hilarious, but also like, because everything about Deadly Premonition is adorable and hilarious.
And also broken.
Yeah, it's so broken and silly.
Yeah, it's a game that feels naive in a lot of different senses of the word.
Sure.
But it's also so much more interesting because it made those choices. I don't know. I just love that game so much. Like I had
absolutely.
And that's one of the reasons I think that everyone should just hate review scores. How are you supposed to score that game? Come on.
Yeah.
Just get rid of it. Get rid of it. Come on.
Pretty much.
It's either a 10 or a 0.
Yeah.
Nothing in between.
There's no gray area with Deadly Premonition, whereas White Knight is all gray area.
Genius or
black
trash.
And white.
Yeah.
Yes.
Die.
I got that in.
Oh my god. But yes.
But I agree that there's Deadly Premonition in this game. It's just, this game is intentional. And I think designed by people who know what they were doing, but just got really carried away with the stylistic
Man, if you
elements.
accidentally make Deadly Premonition, you're in a bad... unless you are actually the team that made Deadly Premonition.
Right, unless you're Swery, basically.
Yeah.
Swery and company.
I do feel like there is a... It's not uncommon these days to see games that get a little bit carried away in their sort of stylish ambitions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is a little sad. In this case, it's a little sad because it's keeping me from getting to this fiction that's actually really interesting and cool. And it does look really nice. You know, I just want to be able to carry it out to its conclusion.
Did you ever play Beatbuddy? Did you play Beatbuddy?
No.
It was.
I've never heard of that.
So Beatbuddy is like a puzzle game. Based like underwater puzzle game, like kind of like based on this like little fish dude or whatever called Beatbuddy. And the idea is that like all of the puzzles have to be solved along to the music. Okay. So like cool. It's basically like a layered soundtrack. I think like lots of famous people do tracks for each level. Each level is a different track, and you create parts of the soundtrack by interacting with some of the puzzle elements in it. So like if you bounce off, say, particular shells, it'll have like a hi-hat noise. Or whatever.
Is this a current game?
It was like out last year, I think.
What systems was it?
It was PC.
Computer game.
Computer game.
It's a computer game.
It was on Steam. I'm not sure if it was on anything else.
Okay, what does this have to do with White Knight or Deadly Premonition, if anything? Not to say that it's okay for it to not. Okay, but I was just kind of
Beatbuddy, Tale of the Guardians.
Yeah. Oh, that's so like. So like the link is, I feel like the overriding idea that they wanted to put across was like that they wanted to be super clever and have like the puzzles like layer the music like in each level and like be really interesting because it was like essentially you were creating some of the like the soundtrack for this game by playing the game. But it just, like, that design kind of decision overrode, like, everything else in the game, so it actually wasn't that pleasurable to play.
Oh, so you're saying it's not good.
So...
I thought you were... I couldn't tell where you were going.
I thought it was okay, but it just wasn't good enough. And it's like White Knight in that I do kind of enjoy it, but like it's got all these other like microaggressions basically.
Yeah, absolutely. This is designed by microaggression. I feel like that's exactly what White Knight's problem is. Yeah, absolutely.
I need to say that. Sorry, I just searched for Beatbuddy because I'd never heard of this. It's actually hard to find. Actually, this game does not seem to have maintained a lot of stickiness on the internet, but. This game has a title, a subtitle, and a tagline, and all three of them sound like they're from completely different games. So it is Beatbuddy, Tale of the Guardians, The Crazy Arcade Adventure.
Oh, God.
None of those things have any, like, those are just, and they're all in totally different fonts, too. Beatbuddy is in, like, kind of a wacky, like, blue pastel, kind of, like, fun font, and then Tale of the Guardians is in, like, fantasy calligraphy script, and then The Crazy Arcade Adventure is in pixel like arcade font with an exclamation point.
Oh wow.
I feel like
strange.
That's a really good
microaggression by font.
Yeah, I feel like that's a really good summing up of exactly what Beatbuddy is because it really doesn't know what it is. Like it has no idea what it is. And I don't know, like there was something about it. So I gave like this such a lukewarm review on RPS. And then, like, everyone in the comments was like, Cara's reviews are usually so much better than this because she's usually, like, really into it or really not into it. I'm like, well, that was the point of this review, was saying to you that I am kind of, like, not either. Like, it's fine. Like,
those reviews are really difficult to write.
It's so hard to write. So, yeah, it was really, Anyway. I think that like this stylized stuff, like overriding everything else, is like a huge problem because people are like, oh, I want it to look like this and feel like this, but then it ends up just not being anything.
Feel I think ends up being a bit more important when it comes to having a functional game that you know you don't want your game to get in the way of people playing your game.
Are you saying you're a feels journalist?
I'm a feel journalist. I go by feel.
Feels only.
Man.
Yeah, only feels.
Oof.
Is that? You're making.
Is that like a pejorative?
Look at the smug face.
We're being.
You guys want to do some reader mail?
I thought
I do. I'll talk about the other game next time. I have plenty of other goodies for next week.
Cool. All right. So Axel writes.
Oh, first off, this is the reader mail segment, which we never introduce anymore. But this is reader mail. It's mail from you, the readers. If you have an email that you would like us to read on this podcast, please write us at questions@idlethumbs.net.
True.
We love it when you do that, and sometimes people don't, and then we don't have a lot to read.
we have a decent amount. This
Thanks, everyone who wrote in recently.
Yes. So Axel writes, Hello, Idle Thumbs. I just found your podcast, and I'm going through your library in reverse order, interspersed with the new episode, so please forgive the fact that I cannot remember when you were mentioning the Russian book The Last Ring Bearer, which retells the Lord of the Rings trilogy from Sauron's perspective. When playing Shadows of Mordor in the last couple days, I was beheading a war chief when he said something that stuck with me. While on his knees staring at his fate, he fatalistically said, "We were fighting for order, now the world will fall to chaos." This immediately made me think of the book and truly start to wonder who was truly evil in Middle-earth if Sauron was only a misunderstood leader ahead of his time. 2 seconds later, I was back to setting orcs on fire and stomping them with a grog. A grog? Anyway, thank you for your podcast. I am grateful to find an intelligent podcast from a creative point of view. Cue Danielle making a fart sound if read on air. Oh,
Nice.
Man. Oh, yeah.
That first one was a way weirder fart.
Yeah.
It was. I know. I'm sorry. It was a poot, and then it was a full fart.
This person also has their email signature includes a Charles Schultz quote, which I'm going to read.
That's awesome.
I'm going to assume he intended that. Don't worry about the world coming to an end tomorrow. It's already tomorrow in Australia. Charles Schultz. So,
Oh, that's
try that. It's
delightful.
kind of a
That's nice.
nice little thing.
His quote from Charles Schultz is, "The wacky arcade game that's fun to play," or whatever.
Exactly. Do you want to talk about your vision for Shadow of Mordor?
Oh yeah, because everyone always asks me about this. Okay, so I have to make it clear that this isn't my idea. It was originally a theory that Yannick Lejak at Kotaku.com
yes.
had, because he and I were playing Shadow of Mordor, and he said, this game is essentially just a homoerotic dating sim.
Absolutely.
And I was like, what? And he was like, it's gay as hell, basically. He was like, this is a game in which orcs are just massively overexcited to get near Italian, I think his name is,
yes.
the main character, and essentially it's all about like them sort of every
the
time you
things
kill
that they'll do to you.
yeah, like it has those like little cutscenes with the boss orcs who are just like, I just want, and they're holding him, they're just like, I just wanna, and you're like, yeah, I know what you want to do, you know, like, and it's just like, and Yannick had this whole theory all where he's just like, it's basically the most homoerotic AAA game we have, and it's like the closest we've got to a AAA dating sim.
Hey, Army of Two.
Army of Two is also
true too.
That's true.
That's a good point.
But anyway, I feel like there's a lot to be said about that game. There's definitely this feeling of like bodies and like
yes,
like it's like very kind of I want to get close to this person, and then they kind of every time you kill off one of the orcs, they kind of regroup into like who's gonna like top you, basically.
Absolutely.
It's great. I think it's great.
the whole time Patricia was playing this game, we kept joking about how this would be so much more fun as a dating sim.
Do you
And
think
then when
they're
you sort of
bummed
said
when you
that,
just murder them? Are they
Yeah,
like,
like,
shit,
they're
this
just
isn't
like-
what I...
Exactly.
But then they
like,
come
come
back for
on.
more.
That's true, actually.
they're
You're
never
right.
quite done.
No, you're right, actually.
But anyway, please everyone go find Yannick Lejak on Twitter and just tweet him and say, please write that entire article and put it on
wanna hear the full
Kotaku.com.
theory. Yes.
Because that is like, he first had this idea months ago and hasn't written it down, and it's really annoying to me, who has a column on sex and video games. So
I think you should steal it from him and
I
just
know,
write
I
it.
should just steal it and write it, right? Okay.
I think you'll do justice to it.
Yeah, okay, fine.
All right. Anthony Newman writes, Nathan Drake trapped in a bink. Hey, Thumbs. Naughty Dog developer here. In episode 199, The Ghost in the Shell, you briefly mentioned
Yes, thank God we got that name out there.
Yes.
You
Yes.
briefly mentioned the Uncharted cutscenes, and you seem to believe that they work well to hide loading. This is a common misconception I'd like to help dispel. The cutscenes in the Uncharted games and The Last of Us do not hide any loading. As soon as the cutscene begins playing, the player is allowed to pause and skip the cutscene, and there is still no loading screen. The end of each level has the beginning of the next level already loaded pre-cutscene. There were a couple of exceptions in The Last of Us because that game taxed the memory of the PS3 so intensely, so there were a couple of cutscenes that would give you a brief loading screen if you tried to skip them. Love the show. Keep up the great work, Anthony.
That's
Man, that
cool.
is an incredibly
Jake,
common
you
misconception.
were wrong.
I think I heard that from Sean, actually, so I'm just going to
No.
pass that buck to Mr. Vanneman, who I think actually is the one who talked about that. But I've heard that in a million places. I've heard that the cutscenes in Uncharted are load screen bridges. So that's and in Last of Us.
Mhm. Nope.
I really love that you have listeners from Naughty Dog who are just like, actually.
Let me tell you that we
pretty cool.
streamed that in before the
Me.
cutscene.
Yeah.
So eat shit, Idle Thumbs.
What, that's cool.
Consider it eaten. Like
If I had
whatever.
a
Consider the shit eaten.
If I had like fucking achieved that in my job.
Yeah, if you have a game that has the fidelity of Uncharted running on a PS3 and there's not actually any load screens anywhere, holy fuck.
Yeah.
Like, that's awesome.
That's something to be proud of.
Good work.
I remember Hideo Kojima saying that he saw that there were no cutscenes in GTA and was like, wow, I would really like to make that game. I'm like, you can make it happen, Kojima, please.
Yes,
please make no more
Everyone wants
cutscenes.
that.
That would be wonderful. Thank you. Bye.
A cutsceneless Kojima game?
Look at your
What would be left? Am I right?
But really, there would be very little left.
Okay. Corey Snell writes, "Hey Thumbs, last week both Sean and Danielle mentioned childhood misinterpretations very similar to my own. Just like Sean, I also misinterpreted a do not drink PSA. Although in my case, it was do not drink and drive. I was around 7 at the time, and my class was having police officers go around class to class to speak with the children. Once I heard the dangers of drinking and driving, I promptly informed the officer and teacher that my mother drinks and drives all the time. For some reason, I had the impression that the reason you shouldn't do this is that she would choke and crash while drinking her coffee on the way to work.
Oh, no.
Needless to say, this was well after the school's principal and an officer questioned my mom and searched her vehicle." As for Danielle's story about renting something simply because it had a beloved character on the box, I've also made that mistake. Actually, my brother did, but I was still a victim. While cruising the aisles at our local Tower Records, my brother spotted a movie that had Will Smith on the cover. Thinking no harm could come of it, he decided to rent it. 6 Degrees of Separation is not a movie any 8 and 9-year-old should watch. Thanks for the great podcast, and sorry for the rant. Corey from SoCal.
Oh, that
awesome.
was a good laugh.
I actually I didn't say this last week, but I had the same misconception Sean did when my parents were talking about a formerly alcoholic member of our family who can't drink anymore. And I remember I was playing in the basement. I was like, he's going to die. He's going to be so thirsty. How do you not drink? Do you just have to have special food? And I had like a whole rant in my head. I was 6 or something.
Well, okay, so here's another one from Jen Bennett. She writes, "Hello, Thumbs. Congratulations on 200 episodes."
On 2,000 episodes.
I know.
I wish.
Yes.
Man, Idle Thumbs 2000. What a good episode name.
I think Idle Thumbs 20 was called Idle Thumbs 2000.
It probably was.
Excellent.
Hello, Thumbs. Congratulations on 200 episodes. I was reminded of these kid perspective shenanigans by Reader Mail section in the last episode. My dad was an early adopter of a lot of personal computers that came out in the 80s and 90s. I was probably in preschool when I thought I'd help my dad with his chores by tidying up one of his computers. I'm almost positive it was an Atari ST because dragging items to the trash immediately and permanently deleted them. I did a lot of irreparable damage that day.
Oh, man. When I was... this is completely unrelated to misinterpreting things as a kid, except that it kind of is. When I was in 5th grade, I was really into, like, Apple II computers to the point that I was in an Apple II users group.
Nice.
And they waived the membership fee because I was a child if I wrote a column for the newsletter.
Oh, man. What? How
What child labor?
I was going to say they exploited you.
About sort of just my life as a kid who used computers to the degree that I did.
Yeah.
And I remember the first and I think only column that I wrote was me asking why my computer didn't work anymore because it was missing like 3 system files that I absentmindedly erased.
That's adorable.
Man.
I can imagine.
Do you have a record of this anywhere?
I'm sure I still have that newsletter.
Oh my god, you have to
It was
find
an
it.
old issue of the
please do.
Gravenstein Apple Users Group, which was a user group for Apple IIGS computers.
Oh man.
I remember completely misinterpreting what a zip drive was, and I put a floppy disk in it, and I broke it, and my dad had to dismantle it, and I put it back together.
So this is a story about how we're all shit, apparently.
Yes, we're actually not very good computer people at all. So yeah.
So the reader actually continues. The reason I followed up on this is because of the previous one. So she says, around the same time, there was a huge Don't Drink and Drive PSA campaign that had terrifying billboards and commercials everywhere. My mom liked to drink soda in the car. I had countless knockdown, drag-out meltdowns at my mom because I was sure she was going to get sent to timeout forever. This might be pretty obvious, but I was an only child. Thank you for the great podcast. I've become a devoted reader in the last year. Wishing you all the best, Jen.
That's really sweet.
Awesome.
I like the don't drink and drive PSAs.
Kids are just like, what does that mean?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. It probably should be more explicit for young children. Like
But I
if
think
you're going to
I'm
7-year-olds.
sure that stuff has to be like aggressively parented in those meetings. We're like, kids might not know what drinking and driving is. Good. We should not tell them what alcohol is.
That's true, yeah.
But then now you have kids who just have, like, who learn what anxiety is instead, which will lead them to drinking and driving.
Oh my god.
Exactly. It's a vicious cycle, Jake.
Yeah. She's like, what's drinking? Oh, it's a thing that adults do to calm down after a hard day. And you're like, oh, I need that now because I was so worried that you were going to be taken away from me because of that soda and coffee.
You're going to go to jail.
I told the police officer about it.
I think I remember asking my mother what a condom was at one point when I was very, very young.
Oh, yeah.
And she said something really hilarious like, oh, it's just a little hat for a penis or something. That's fucking awesome.
Was that a satisfying answer to you?
Yes, and I was like,
oh, good.
You're like, oh, I could see why you'd put a little hat on a penis.
and then I was really jealous of my brother's penis. I was like, why does he get to put a hat on his penis? I just assumed that every day when my brother was getting dressed that he was putting a hat on his penis.
That's part of his clothes, yeah.
The top drawer is just all small clothes.
Right. You could dress it up and just have a nice, I don't know. I don't know when I was ever disabused of that notion. Maybe now I'm not. So maybe all of these people I'm dating, I'm just like, why is it hatless?
Yeah, it's like, what's going on with that?
Yeah, like, we need to get a hat for that.
Yeah. What, does it get cold? I mean, come on. Get a hat.
Quite the opposite. Andrew Hamilton writes, Hi Thumbs, I'm writing in to share my own video game visual misunderstanding. I found plenty of moments where I was seeing things incorrectly in video games. The one I always come back to is the thief in the original Final Fantasy for the NES. For whatever reason, despite the fact that he's presented in a side view, his most distant shoulder is drawn in view. Since my young brain didn't think I should be seeing his arm, I always saw it as a long trunk like that of an elephant.
Oh man! Okay, that's actually totally accurate.
He would run into battle wielding a little knife in his trunk, slashing at monsters in an effort to save the world. I always thought this game was so weird for having all these human characters and then one weird elephant man. Anyway, love the recent show. I'd never complain if you guys did more Sixers or at least threw some hot scoops in once in a while. Miss those scoops, Delarette.
Awesome.
If you want Steve to appear on Idle Thumbs, harass him on Twitter and tell him to come to San Francisco for a couple days, and then he'll be on the podcast.
Yeah,
yes.
Accurate.
Absolutely.
Chris was on Skype last week, but as we all know, that was a fucking travesty.
Yeah, that was bad.
So never again. We dipped our toe into the water of Idle Thumbs Skype. Ugh.
Only for $250 if necessary.
Yeah.
No, Idle Thumbs 300. Idle Thumbs 500.
300.
500 is the next time we'll do Skype. Oh, man, because we'll have to, because we'll all be convalescing.
Yeah, pretty much. You know.
And
I could make Steve Skype in next week or
fuck
something.
that shit.
You'll be Steve next week.
I'll be Steve next week. I'll draw on a
What does
beard.
Steve Gaynor sound
You've
like?
got the undies.
Hi, I'm Steve Gaynor.
That was shit.
That was
okay. work on that. If you can pass yourself off as the true hot scoops next week.
Just get the laugh down. If you can get the laugh down, you're golden.
Steve always sounds like he's grinning. Do you not think he always when he's talking, he always sounds like
what
really
does Steve's
smart?
laugh sound like?
I can't remember. I can't remember what his laugh sounds like.
I can't.
Oh, we all know that it sounds like Ganon from Zelda 2.
Oh, that's true. It does.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. If you can work on that, Cara.
Okay, I'll
just die in Zelda 2 a lot and sort of practice that sound.
Die in Zelda 2.
Or listen to, I think it's like Soda Popinski who has that laugh. One of the characters in original Punch-Out has that laugh too.
So William Harris is writing in to save us a little bit of face about the Banjo-Kazooie Ratchet and Clank mix-up from a few episodes ago.
Oh, okay. Did we talk about that on the air? We said Ratchet and Clank nuts and bolts, especially me. I'm a goddamn idiot. Obviously, it's Banjo-Kazooie. I have to talk for half a second about this.
I like how put out you are about having to acknowledge this.
I actually felt really bad. I felt like a big old idiot. But I didn't actually play any of those platformers because during the era of PlayStation 1 and 2, which is when platformers reigned supreme.
Yeah. When 3D animal platformers.
When it was all about, when it was the age of animal platformers, like when Gex existed. I guess Gex was 3D. He'd been around.
Oh my god, I love Gex.
Yeah.
We ran Gex into the ground. We can't talk about Gex anymore. Except you could share your love for Gex and his weird TV metaverse bullshit. But I just didn't play any of those, which is weird because I identified entirely as like a platformer person in 8-bit and 16-bit era, and I think I didn't like Mario 64, and then I just went and but I basically was just playing Quake 1, 2, and 3 during the entire
me too, I guess.
the entire reign of those. So when people are like, "How dare you mistake Ratchet and Clank for Banjo-Kazooie?" I'm like,
my path through video games went exactly the way yours didn't. I graduated from the 2D platformers right into the 3D animal platformers and loved them and was obsessed with them.
They all just seem the same to me. They make me feel like an old dad.
I had the same experience as Jak and Daxter and Banjo-Kazooie and Ratchet and Clank, and I know they were all different. I'm sure they were like, you don't need to tell me.
I always sort of knew that
Sly
Cooper was different because it was a little more stealthy.
It was stealthier.
But like Ratchet and Clank,
Ratchet and Clank had shooting. Banjo-Kazooie was more...
But Jak and Daxter and Ratchet and Clank were very similar, right?
Yeah, they had some similarities, although Jak and Daxter was actually more sort of traversal based. Like they put cars in that series way before they did.
It's funny. Actually, I remember at a friend's house, I played all the way through the original Jak and Daxter in one day. Wow. He was like, "You've never played any of these games?" And I'm like, "No." He's like, "You gotta play Jak and Daxter. It's amazing." I played through the entire thing in one day, and I'm like, "That was so boring. Why did I just do that?" It was,
and then he's like, "Now let's play Blinks the Time Sweeper."
Oh no, Blinks!
It was such a strange experience. It was during this very specific period in my life that is maybe like a 2-year period. That was the only time in which it would have been remotely feasible for me to play all the way through a game like that in a single day at a friend's house.
Right, right.
Because he was like, he ended up just kind of like going and doing stuff with his parents. Like,
You're just like, hey, you stole his console.
I think we were home I think it was over summer and we were in college, and I think he was Mormon, and I remember going to his house, and like I remember his parents were always kind of vaguely suspicious of me because I'm not a Mormon, and
this is your friend with the revelation about Boys to Men, isn't it?
Yes, it was.
Awesome.
And also like we got him into like playing in our band and stuff, so we also were even more sort of
You corrupted the shit out of this guy.
Yes,
but he corrupted you by making you play through all of Jak and Daxter.
Like, he was like, "Oh, just stay out of the way." Like I'm like, like don't like. His parents got home from somewhere, and I was already like sort of. He was showing me the game, and I remember I just kind of ended up just playing through the entire rest of the game just at his house. It was a weird experience. And anyway, my conclusion was I was right to not be playing these games because I found it very tedious.
I was just a PC gamer for that entire era.
I was too, unto myself. Yeah.
Like still playing Doom.
I was the N64 kid, which is why I didn't even actually play the Jak and Daxter games until later on. But
yeah, I was
all N64 all the way.
I had one, but I did not use it for any of that stuff at all.
You weren't into those animal
Dungeon Keepers. Dungeon Keeper, that was very.
Oh man, Dungeon Keeper was great.
You were keeping dungeons. Anyway, this person's going to say why it's okay that I fucked up.
Yeah, so I mean not really, but he's trying to throw you a bone. So William Harris writes, "Hi Thumbs. Obviously by this point you have been told repeatedly that it's Banjo-Kazooie, not Ratchet and Clank. To be fair, nuts and bolts would fit the sexual innuendo of a Ratchet and Clank subtitle.
See, this is what's bad about it. Anyway.
Such as going commando or up your arsenal. So there's that. However, Nuts and Bolts is the bastard son of the Banjo-Kazooie franchise. I love the game mostly because I don't hold any particular reverence for the original games. Nuts and Bolts caught my eye immediately upon release. And while it is entertaining to build various versions of the same car or plane, the most fun, like with Besieged, comes from using the objects in ways the developers probably didn't intend. People have made transforming walking mechs, Batpod-style hidden motorcycle, car planes, transforming walking Batpod-style hidden car planes. It's super interesting to see what people have created since the game came out. Love the show. Need more DayZ stories from Sean, or just more stories of emergent gameplay. Either works. Except for my Commodore pet, Frank Harris.
Awesome. Nice. That game is really great. Nuts and Bolts.
It was. I do remember really, really enjoying that game. Yeah.
I really want a tour guide to take me to DayZ because I think I would love that game so much.
That's what you got to do. When we first played it, we played it with Evan Lottie of PC Gamer.
Oh man!
We did a stream where he just kind of like tour guided us through it.
Yeah, I would love to play it. Like, I don't know, like it would just be like me. It would be like. I feel like it'd be like that. Have you seen that new Drad movie? Like, it would be like Sean is just like, yeah, come over here, and I'm just like, just crumble into a ball. Like,
no, I don't think anyone's DayZ experience is that. I think that everyone, well, not anyone that I know. Maybe Evan Lottie, but I think even when Vanneman plays, you're talking about Sean Vanneman?
Yeah.
No, when Sean plays DayZ, he's just like in his underwear. He's just a mess. Like there's no.
He's in his MeUndies.
Yeah, because I've heard him.
MeUndies skin.
But I've heard so like my best friend is Alice, who often plays like Dota 2 with Sean, and sometimes I just go to see Alice, and Alice is playing Dota 2, and Sean's just yelling and yelling. It's really funny.
That's what he's doing.
And then all that Alice does is just to like throw insults at Sean and how Sean's playing, and it's just it's incredibly amusing.
Yeah. That's probably what Sean needs when he plays Dota.
Yeah,
it probably is. Yeah. I can't deal with it. I just like shut down.
Yeah.
I just like sit there and don't respond.
Yeah.
It's like, I can't.
Yeah,
me too. I just don't say
There's a reason that I've never played Dota with Sean, and it is that I used to be his housemate when he started to play Dota.
Sure.
Gosh.
That said, I'm so glad that Sean plays Dota because Dota Today is still my favorite podcast.
I know. Yeah, it's good. I hope he does more of them.
What a cast.
Oh man, I love everything there is about Dota, but like I was originally stuck in the original Dota. Like I got obsessed with it in that era,
the mod
and
version.
I just played like 5 years at university of just that, and it basically now
That's
I'm
what
just
that game does.
really afraid of getting into Dota 2. Like just like an alcoholic might be afraid of having
Dota,
another drink.
but like more refined and more optimized towards life ruining. Think about that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Imagine that the full force of Valve, the masters of basically siphoning all the things that are good and bad about gambling and putting them into a video game that has nothing to do with gambling.
Well, I mean, the most horrific thing about the whole game, like any kind of like MOBA game, is that they've already taken like
We call them Lords Management
Lords
games.
Management, sorry. Lords Management games is like they've had like what 6 or 7 years of like just the like pure Blizzard mod refining itself and iterating itself, and then they took that core and then put it into the expensive Valve shit that they do now,
Yes,
and then they iterated more. So it's like it's so evil now and so good that it's like
You know what's funny about
liquid
it, though,
amazing.
Is that for any of that stuff to take hold, you still have to penetrate into something that's actually incredibly like unintuitive and off-putting and hard.
Yes.
Like I'm sure that all those things are true, but still, when I play Dota 2, I'm like, this is impossible.
Well, the learning
so, like,
curve
it's not able. Like, I'm not
huge.
able to get to the point where it consumes and destroys me.
Well, it's because once you get that one super significant win
I'm
after
sure that's
say
the case. Yeah.
say an hour like of a game, then you're like oh, I could just play one more and then get the same buzz, and then you usually don't, you usually fail, and then like you're still trying to get back that one time.
Yeah.
And that's what it is.
I totally believe that.
That's what it is.
I believe it and refuse to play it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I kind of
And that's reasonable though. I think it's reasonable.
I realized that I realized how unhealthy my relationship with video games has become as a co-host of Idle Thumbs, because I loaded up the Talos Principle the other day to start playing it again, and it seriously felt like I was doing something illicit. Because like we've already talked about this game on Idle Thumbs. Like, we've already talked about it multiple times. I'm gonna play it anyway. Like, I'm not gonna play.
You were playing discreetly.
I'm not. Yeah, I was totally playing discreetly. I was like, I'm not gonna play a new game that we haven't talked about yet. I'm gonna play this one that I can't even. There's not even any point in talking about it. Idle Thumbs, so I'm still gonna play it.
Yes.
Did you enjoy it?
Yeah. Well, actually, so the second I loaded it up, my doorbell rang and my friend arrived and I had to go. But so it was the universe was confirming.
So you got that high though of how you were gonna play it.
I know, it was such a strange thing, and I realized like in that moment,
You're like, I'm gonna play a video game to enjoy it.
Yeah, it was.
I have this.
Gross. How gross are you now? You're a gross man, Chris.
I know I'm gross.
Grossy pants.
I realized how gross I was.
I have this all the time when I had this just last night where I was like, I've been playing a lot of Far Cry 4 lately and really enjoying it and having a lot of fun with it. And again, of course, we're not going to talk about it right now, but like, I had to play a couple of other things for work, and Patricia had to be like, you gotta play the other thing. Like, this is how crazy our lives are, that this is, like, as game journalists, it's kind of like, no, you have to play this for work, and then you can play this for fun. But it's like your diet has to be, steadily.
God, your life is awesome.
My life is great. My life is wonderful. I'm just laughing at how ridiculous
in my case, it's a little bit different in that
Sure.
I feel like I have such little time to play any video games, which is for a lot of reasons. It's not just because of like my job or anything. It's for like a lot of different things that conspire to mean I just have relatively little like clear open time to play video games in.
And you want to maximize it so that you can talk
and
about
so it's
something
like I really
yeah.
realistically am only going to play one thing every week.
Right.
And so then if that thing is not something that I'm going to get Idle Thumbs material out of, it feels like I'm wasting
it's empty calories.
Exactly. It totally feels like that. It feels like I'm like doing a disservice to the readers, basically.
Well, I mean, I'm a freelance game journalist, so like it's worse for me. Like I literally never start up a video game unless it's for work. So it's kind of a sad existence in which everything is like every video game is not supposed to be fun because it's always for work, and it's just really annoying.
Man, I think we're reasonably done. But talking about Full Throttle coming out 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just.
Talking about this thing we talked about like 2 hours
ago. Sorry. Just because we've talked about console games and PC games and Full Throttle and 20 years ago. Chrono Trigger came out 20 years ago today.
Oh my god.
Really?
Yes.
It feels like longer ago.
Right, so that's the thing.
Yeah.
Chrono Trigger came out 20 years ago today. Full Throttle came out 20 years ago, April 30th.
Holy
of
shit.
that same year.
Crazy.
I always forget that CD-ROM games and Super Nintendo coexisted.
Yeah.
God, think about how much, like, not that Chrono Trigger isn't like an attractive game in its own right, but it's like a totally different thing.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like when you think about Full Throttle was 100% voice acted and animated.
But
and
then consoles caught up basically immediately because 96 was PlayStation,
as soon as
right?
PlayStation came out.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But like, man, that divide is crazy to think about. That, like, weird. Sorry, I just like.
No, it's totally crazy.
My brain just exploded when I thought about like Ben beefing it like his bike going off the road.
Yeah.
And then also like the popular like the music from Chrono Trigger that has entrenched itself in like geek culture against like the Gone Jackals and Peter McConnell's like noir rumbling piano score. Like what a crazy contrast that is.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm saying is PC Master Race 20th anniversary.
Nice.
No.
Yay.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I stopped playing video games around about the time. Well, I didn't really, but like I didn't play with like because I had a I didn't have a Super Nintendo. My friend next door had a Super Nintendo, which I had a relationship with.
Good.
But yeah, like I just didn't play video games on consoles for a really long time after that because I was like a PC gamer, and also like PlayStation was like marketed super heavily towards boys. Like so much so that I felt like it was a macho thing to play on the PlayStation, and it wasn't for me specifically. And that was like weird because I started to be like super alienated.
And then Tomb Raider came and was like fixing that problem for you because then it was
it didn't really fix the PlayStation problem because like she was meant to be a sex symbol that was on a PlayStation, whereas like it seemed kind of divided. So when I got Tomb Raider, I think it was several years after I suppose it came out, and like it seemed like a separate thing that was like okay on the PC. I don't know. It seemed like
I get where you're coming from.
So it was strange.
Sorry, the PlayStation 1 came out in Japan in 94? I don't know anything about anything. Sorry.
Wow.
I don't know.
That's also surprising.
That is.
Okay, so let's just dork. People in the world will tell me to shut up about all this stuff. But yeah, Japan, 1994. And then, so 1995 is apparently the year of insanity because that's Full Throttle and Chrono Trigger came out at that time. And then in September 3rd of 95, the PlayStation came out. So I guess I forget how much of a transformative year 1995 is for everything.
For games.
Yeah.
Anyway, video games.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was like... I thought, like Tomb Raider was 96, wasn't it?
Yes.
So like, yeah. So we're in the kind of right time frame, sort of.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, 20 years ago.
This podcast ended.
Yes.
Nice.
1995 was so crazy. Thank you for listening to this week's Idle Thumbs. If you liked it, why not recommend it to a friend? That always helps us out a little bit. You could also rate us on iTunes if you think we deserve a good rating, and if you don't, maybe just leave that button alone.
Yeah.
We are on Twitter at Idle Thumbs, on Facebook at facebook.com/idlethumbs. Our website is idlethumbs.net/idlethumbs, a classic URL. Twitch, yes, where Danielle often streams, is twitch.tv/idlethumbs.
For instance, you can watch the White Knight stream there, right? What? You weren't even on
the other one.
Never mind. Don't go there, I guess.
Don't go there.
Angry Toad. I had a plug.
Constipated Toad.
I had a super quick plug. It's the quickest plug ever.
Oh, go for it.
In the words of Michael Jackson
Yes.
from Moonwalker, it's just a plug.
It's just a plug. Hey! I have a game at Different Games this year, which is in New York from April 3rd to the 4th.
Nice.
Coming up soon. It's a game I made. It's Cyberpunk, and I'm really excited to have a game as a developer, I guess, which is exciting.
What's it called?
It's called Floor 999. It's a Cyberpunk inbox hacking adventure.
Sweet.
Sounds cool.
And where is it?
It's in New York at Different Games, April 3rd to 4th.
Nice.
Cool.
Exciting stuff.
All right.
Anyway, hooray.
You can also write us email at questions@owlthumbs.net.
We already covered that.
No, I didn't. Oh, yes, you did a long time ago.
That's right. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for being on this week.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Cara.
Thank you, Cara.
Thanks for inviting me. It was
Cara's
great.
the best. Do you want to say where your Tumblr
Oh,
is?
yeah.
Or?
Oh, okay. Well, you can find me on Twitter at Cara Ellison, CaraEllison, not the K, the C.
Yes.
And then also I have a website at caraellison.co.uk where all my work is. So.
Sweet.
Super.
Thanks for being on this week. See you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye.
This episode was brought to you by Brave Wave, a video game music label. This week, they released Retroactive Part 1, the first ever solo album from Kaiji Yamagishi, who was the composer of Ninja Gaiden and Tecmo's Super Bowl.
Ooh.
I know. After a decade of no video game music composition, he is back. Go to store.bravewave.net to listen to the entire album for free and buy it if you want. Check out a little clip from it now.
Super.
Cool.